Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Sandbag Casual segment with the 2MK team. Today we are looking at Under Night in Birth. From the perspective of the same, guarding our position on screen that we were discussing before. We're currently in training mode against a character that I don't fight against since no one on the team plays him. The common set in level 3, basically easy. And we're learning to deal with spacing things and how to win out from there. Now, while I do have some understanding of stats in terms of combos and the things that the game has taught me to do, I can't say I have a full understanding of it, and I definitely can't necessarily play him all that well. Right now, the basically matchmaking is on, and I'll be accepting whatever matches I get. And even though it is functionally ranked, it's effectively Sandbag Casual, given that I don't expect to win that much, if at all. But we are looking at how to apply those fundamentals, understanding and learning for your characters. Seth is a relatively short-range character, more so like Jan than Chun-Li, or to some extent Colleen. He's close to Colleen, honestly, but depending on what you're doing. For those of you who are not familiar with this game, while it is by almost all obvious standards anime, it is not in fact what we would call an air dasher based on what we were saying yesterday for Guilty Gear. In other words, the aerial movement involved in this game is approximately normal with 1 or 2 changes. If you're more used to traditional fighting games of this type, the most mobile characters in those games, or pretty much anyone in King of Fighters, that's the amount of mobility you're getting, with 1 extra piece. You have this assault dash, which is effectively a King of Fighters style hop, and this can be done in the air at basically any height. But you cannot generally air dash backward. Seth can, but do not assume that all characters can do this. One frame of lag, huh? That's 2 frames. Good. So, my opponent should have a much better idea of where their ranges need to be than I should have. This is something you get used to when playing online, but the important thing is to not necessarily win this, but to figure out what you can or cannot do. Watch where this opponent is standing on their knockdown, and see what if I have a way out of it. So far, I haven't seen anything yet, but this is the type of game this is. Any game will allow you to do this if you understand enough about where to stand and have extra damage potential. So, while this sort of experience should generally be discouraging to most people, I finally got points for that too, which I'm not really sure I understand, but okay. So in that short space of time, I've learned that against Carmine, if I get knocked down at a particular range, he obviously has knockdown pressure. And it involves him being slightly far away from me and covering that knockdown space that way. So I can immediately start to think about what Seth could do that is quick and still able to get out of that, if that's even possible. Sometimes the lockdown character in a game like this is so good at it that your aim really is to never get knocked down in the first place. Or to use the equivalent of the game's V reversal to get out of those situations. In this game, that system is done by using quarter circle back while being hit and hitting your assault button. I don't know what to call it exactly. The fourth button in your setup will knock your opponent off. It has a cost of... Actually, I've forgotten what it costs. I think it's gauge of some kind. And eventually, if you do it too much, you'll vorpal break yourself or something. But that won't happen in this setup, so you need to have a certain amount of meter to do it. And then after that, you just need to activate while blocking. But, oh, there we go. We've seen it as the vorpal break. Therefore, I was unable to do it in that time. If the opponent breaks through it by trying to throw you or similar, or you are in that state where they have managed to make that read, and what you see at the bottom of the screen, that state where the bar no longer seems to have any blow at all, it means that I functionally can't get out anything anymore while that state is on. Now this attack is not very damaging. And obviously I will look for a way to get out the other way first. But rather than thinking, I should be trying to figure out what button I can hit, I'm definitely going to at least consider the possibility that against Carmine I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to find some way to never get knocked down. However, I can execute that well enough to save. So in the worst situation where the opponent has gotten in and I now have to deal with them being close to me and doing combos, at least the basic combos will not necessarily lead to me being completely broken down. So it looks like that move hits from fairly far away as well. So that's what we'll be looking at and looking for. How far away can you hit me with a move from? And me still successfully do this to you? It appears that the move shares the animation with Seth's standing medium, and therefore I'm going to assume it has similar range to that move, which is quite good as you can see. Compared to many characters in the game, it's not the best, but it's long enough that if my opponent is sticking to me in the first place, my concern is not, can I push you off and still hit you? Not for most characters anyway. So here we have the standard situation, trapped in the corner and not sure how to get out of this. But let's go into another battle with someone. I think this person you've had even more than last time. But given that you get 3,000 points for losing one match, I'm not really sure how much this scales at, which is good because it's actually better that I have no idea how strong these opponents are. I think I fought this person before though. There we go. You can already see that I'm lacking the amount of meter required to get them off me. Now, Seth is a good character for moving forward. Therefore, I'm going to assume that whenever anyone is stuck to me like that, I'm just going to use that to get them off early. Or, I will utilize the fact that they think I will, and will go for throws to try to backdash out or escape it though. The next thing I've learned, obviously, is that a lot of the combos in this game are long, but look like you could get out of them, which is not necessarily true. Hmm, 5,000 for wins, so that means they've probably won 100 matches. Okay. So let's start looking for other ways that Seth can guard the space. He's a slow walker, as you can see, but has a lot of aerial mobility to make up for some of that. And he can stay on the ground when he does that backdash flip thing, or he can go into the air naturally. A little execution to play into this, but it has some uses. A new sacrifice comes to 10-win streak. Alright, let's go. This character is one of those who manages to keep the opponent away, so guarding my own space is unlikely to be the main way this works. So we'll consider her the guile of the game for now, in fact. If you are familiar, that is. No laggy. However, she seems to need to move quite a lot in order to hold position that she wants, which might be useful to me. However, regardless of that, I still can't just attack when I want to. I must respect the character at least enough to see that go through. The live became 7 frames, but I definitely won't think that it has anything to do with the losing. That was just me trying to get in and not having any idea how that should have been done. But I did pick up information from it. Not a lot, but some. And I did not use my patented death dive kick into it because I did not figure that they would let me get away with that. Anyway. No, my opponent will dodge eventually, probably. It's actually very important when you play this game to get used to the idea that certain combos, while they look like they would have a way out based on the rhythm you're used to from other games, are actual combos. The game will tell you when it's not a combo. It even comes up on screen, invalid combo. So for example, I can mash buttons during this and I will tech out on the ground. But if you see a main combo start and the launcher timing is good, you can generally assume that even though it looks slow, the 8 hits or whatever that you're suffering through is real.
A new sacrifice comes to...
Okay, someone who has probably only played 10 matches, maybe? Let's call it 19 and assume they lost all of them like I will. So here we have range, lots of it. And until one is clear on how much range you're talking, it's hard to do a whole lot. However, as noted, there are ways in if you understand your opponent's spacing. Therefore, our aim is to learn that. What we're looking for right now is the range at which this will land or connect in the correct way. This is Seth's forward heavy. He can do it in the air if he wants. But as with most such things, you have to be very careful about when you do it in the air, otherwise you'll just get knocked out. Or it won't hit in the right height, that sort of thing. So if I'm trying to slip through my opponent's buttons like that, I have to be very clear on where I want to be when I'm jumping. That move, however, is unblockable. So, at this point, we're at the stage of I could probably, if I could time this correctly, get the timing for doing all this right. But 12,000? I don't even understand where they go with the points in here. But onward. Now that has nothing to do with guarding my space, but it does offer an interesting perspective on how to do it against certain types of opponents. While it would seem like an obvious point that, hey, if you want to guard your spot, you should do it with long normals, and you're generally relatively fast ones. If your opponent has a good way to start an attack or start a spacing from outside your range, you might want to use longer ones. So, If we use the idea of similarity between characters when people play them, I should probably assume that this is closer to the way I'm supposed to use Chun-Li than forward heavy. And even if it's not plus, it's still probably the same concept. I use this button when I think that my opponent has hesitated for a moment in their actual entry. My other good option is that, which is sense, dash, and slash. Like, you actually have to dash to do this move. This is not really guarding my spot in the simplest sense, but depending on how far away my opponent is and what they have in mind, this might be effective. It can be effective because Seth has a lot of moves that will make the opponent not want to come right at him without doing particular things. That ability to catch an opponent who is making a long approach is one of the important factors of my character. Since they don't know whether or not to aim their attack at my expected aerial position, or actually try to open me up by getting close enough. And since most moves that would deal with both those things are very difficult to do on the approach, they're relying on hitting certain buttons in the air before I can do anything. So, we're having a rematch with the wall sting. But that's starting to not seem like a great idea because that's again about opening them up. If I can get in using it, that's great, but what is that for? So let's try using this one instead. The strength of characters like Seth is that if you can get the opponent to block, to not want to fight you, you've automatically guarded your spots. Just making your opponent feel that your footsies are better, that you have more options on the approach than they do, can be an effective method of defending your space. So, once I've gotten the opponent to thinking about that, even if they don't necessarily know what it does, there must be some reason I'm doing it right. The rest is to make them want to come in as a result of doing it. And then finding the spacing that they're at so that I can do whatever. Similarly, as noted before, if you know what you're doing, you can sometimes win just on timeouts in these sort of situations. I think I fell short though. I did.
その矮小な体でよく頑張ったと褒めてやる。だが戦いはパワーこそが全てだ。鍛え上げるがよい。その肉体も精神もな。
Ah, it even tells me how many times they played. Good stuff. So, we're already looking at those main options. And that's a good knock away, which probably has some sort of combo that I should do something about, but whatever. So round 3. The other thing about the orb is that it covers enough of my approach to set up the opponent up somewhat. Ooh, miss. I have to get used to the fact that that's a command grab. But I can just try to activate my Zangief style instincts on this. At the moment, for example, my biggest problem in this match is that once I mess up an attack, I'm not prepared for how much it damages me. And I'm not prepared for the range that I need to defend from. Mainly because I'm just not used to people having quite so long jump-in buttons. But that's fine, given what I'm trying to do. So far, I've learned a little bit about the distance I move with that, and at least in the case of that opponent, their perspective on what is likely to happen at a long range. So at the moment, I'm actually fairly happy about this concept, even if it's not going to last me very long or work too long. Because it will teach me enough about where the other spacings go that I can get something. And if you're not necessarily the sort of person who needs to fight a lot of people, games like this where there are not too many people playing online but just enough in your area to keep on getting matches with the same person, it might still help out. So let's look at the other part of this. The opponent is now jumping in with really long buttons to great effect. And Seth is not exactly a great anti-air character as noted. I need to find the correct thing to hit them with, and I must do it consistently. But the question is, how good is that jumping button of theirs? These games do tend to have at least some button with basically full invincibility to air attacks. And I believe that that's the same down forward key that I mentioned before. That should have been the forward. Of course, you do need to have the move actually start up, so that didn't work at all.
存外軽すぎるな。
But as always, guarding your spot does involve being absolutely certain of that. When you're relatively trained in fighting games as a whole, even unfamiliar or slow anti-airs become easy enough to do in the sense that you expect to hit whatever. You can just reprogram your mind. This is how I do anti-airs.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
Sorry, Kadar, I guess I'm your only opponent, so you're not going to take it now. Maybe I'm the one that cancels it.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
Oh, someone else. Nanase, who I have not seen in this before. Alright. I have some idea of Nanase's movement, but not of her combos, so I'm not really going to be all that clear on when I have chances to do what I want. However, I am the one with all the vorpals, so I should probably push them off. That was a bad idea. So, since she can cover her spacing well when she's approaching, and has a good assault / range, I need to think about how to move out of her range before I get to do anything for mine. Wake up backdash with Seth seems like a good idea in this case. It doesn't help me guard anything, but eh. Understanding when it would be difficult to guard your spot because you've already been knocked off it, i.e. getting knocked down, is no longer your spot if you were lying down on it.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
Okay. So we furthermore know, in order to guard my spot against her, I must get away from her long enough to try to take back control of the position. So we're going to be using the backdash for that. Whatever how it happens, we're going to be using the backdash. And given that she does have such a good conversion off certain things, us directly approaching seems like a bad idea. Because you can already see that a lot of the damage being taken here is again similar sort of things. The punish and the uppercut style motion that comes out of facing a new player who thinks that offense is the way to solve their problems, i.e. me at this moment. But so far, we're not actually doing all that poorly in terms of that. It's spacing, footsies, and pressure that is harder to understand if you're used to other games too much. But again, my opponent basically woke up with stuff because it makes more sense to expect that a new player is going to try to get out of things or put up offense than sit there and block longer. This is natural to have as a reaction because you are in the situation where you absolutely know that your opponent will break your guard with the unfamiliarity of their character before you can do anything. And if you know that's going to happen, you might as well test whether or not their pressure is real. What you don't do is the 4th or 5th time that they've demonstrated to you, hey, my pressure is real, that you still do it. So, we're gonna adapt a little bit at least. And in addition to the backdash, we're going to not hit certain things when we actually get the knockdown and see what the opponent does. Similarly, we were just checking, should I just hit that? Because it seems like something I should just be able to stop. And she's basically a Karine style character, so that sort of combo where she's going high, it has a strong implication that I should just be able to hit her. Not that way. That is the reason I was just demonstrating. If your opponent realizes, hey, you're not getting out with buttons anymore, they'll just start throwing you. You don't have any real choice because unless you're ready to respond from the throw. Which is unlikely if they have other ways past it, you're not really going to manage the defense anyway. However, you can force them to show you whether or not the throw is real by hitting your fastest button. This sort of thing generally can't be learned in training mode easily because people who specialize in characters, people who pick up games, this sort of thing is the thing they learn relatively early most of the time. How can I put pressure on the opponent in a way that they can't do anything about or need special understanding of the game to do, or stuff that will be hard to execute at the very least. Even if the understanding doesn't have that much complexity to it, the actual ability to do it is important. But while it may seem hopeless sometimes, the question of, is this actually an unfamiliar situation? Is this character in some way unfamiliar to me in terms of what they're able to do relative to some other character I know from some other game? The answer is often no. As mentioned, she's basically a good Karine. I don't expect to get out of Karine stuff either in the same spaces. In fact, my expectation is that she probably has like some tiny gap in between buttons she's hitting that I need to find and hope with like slash or something. And if that's true, then there's a good chance that I could just auto-combo my way out of certain things. But since she's probably airborne at the point where she has that gap, I wouldn't actually get real combos out of it. All these little things are the sort of things you're thinking about when playing a new game, facing new characters. It's not worth your time to just think, well, I'm losing, this sucks, I want to hit more buttons or whatever. There's stuff you can find. Or at least assume it exists and then check if you're right or not. For example, in this case, it's more important to me that I manage to hit with the down forward heavy than that I can combo off it to do anything. It has combos. In fact, it has really good combos from what I've read. And I've learned none of them. But apparently I can anti-air. What I cannot seem to do is get myself to not get commanded. Yeah. In a game with combos this strong, while it would definitely make sense to be able to do them, in the opposite situation where I was not managing the anti-air, any combos I had learned off the anti-air would be useless. Similarly, any combos that wouldn't work because of some aspect of the match, either wall stains, hitboxes and hurtboxes, or how I have to do it in the timing that it hits in, all those things, I would then end up trying that combo and becoming frustrated that it wasn't working. But at the moment, I'm focused on the idea of, can I land the anti-air and can I observe what happens when I do? It's often helpful to just hit something familiar or correct feeling, and if that happens to work, there's usually a good chance the character works out well for you. I'm too mashy in mine, for example. And realizing that that mashiness is causing a problem means that before I go learning any combos out of my anti-air, I should learn not to mash the anti-air, because if mashing causes the combo to drop, then I'm still doing terribly. I saw an invalid combo come up. Means I could have done something somewhere in there. Which is good. I don't have to know what it is. I just know that next time I see that something that looks like that combo, I'll start mashing a bit. That one, I see nothing invalid in there. So I guess that was a whole just thing that worked. That sort of thing, for example, is really important. I felt my opponent was going to retreat. I felt I had a chance to do this move. And while understanding very little else about this matchup, I was right. It doesn't matter if it's not a good idea normally, because I'm learning the concept of the opponent, not the concept of the game. Your ability to learn the opponent eventually ties into understanding of the game. You can build understanding of the game by building up understanding of any given opponent, but not using that as your foundation for the entire game.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
So we're back to the Nanase, and now, considering whether or not it is possible to get through some of her stuff. Nothing invalid. Nothing invalid. So, the opponent thinks that doing this directly is enough, and they're probably right. We're still looking for where the gap in their after pressure is. They've got pick throws. Crouch light doesn't work there. So we're gonna look and see if the stand light doesn't work. Nope, got mixed up. So the obvious question would be, why do this when you could just go into training mode and try there? The problem is that the CPU simply won't give you any information. Most of the time the CPU is not quite good enough for you to get full information on things like other people's pressure swings or their idea of how mix-ups work.
A new sacrifice comes.
Invalid combo comes up in the same spaces as... actually no. Wait, they changed character. Okay, whatever. You can already see that I have certain ideas of how the spacing works and where my opponent is trying to get to in ways that will make me hit the buttons required. Part of guarding your spot is also understanding where your opponent is going to think your spot is, so that you know when they're going to attack it and in what way. It helps at such sweeter stage.
コンプリートアナサインドアタッチサードクローズディバイドぶつかるぜ発射回るくるくる離れ
As you get more and more used to watching your opponent's specific position, you'll know when to defend or attack in particular situations.
次はないと思う。何らしい。遅い。見切れるか。捉えられない。
And when you have an evasive character like that, it's a little easier to do as a whole, actually. At the very least, you should hope to force your opponent to show you new options from their skill set. But all the while, what I'm actually watching is my timing and spacing relative to approaching opponents when they actually are getting hit by the Stitch Horse. I don't know what those are actually called, but that's what I'm going to end up calling them.
A new sacrifice comes to
命が惜しければ邪魔をするな。
ファーストクローズディバイド
こう捉え次はないと思う。縛る。闇にそこで。
Without pressure of your own, it can be hard to decide whether or not to go in. Unless you're me, in which case you always go in.
次はないと思う。なかなか。次はないと思う。実力をさらせ。
存外軽すぎるな。
The key is to not get discouraged even when you are losing because you're picking up something. If you're not picking up anything and you're just trying to mash because you're trying to win and failing, or managing to succeed but still not winning anything, you might not be getting as much out of this as you think. So far I've learned that this Waltzing player has a good idea of when I'm going to come in and therefore when to do certain jump back stuff. But I could probably just not do those. The question is, if I don't do those, how do I approach if I want to approach at all? Let's try that one. After all, being able to turn invisible temporarily is one of my favorite things to do in fighting games. It also appears that if my opponent is in the middle of approaching, I don't need to use that option.
Second close. Divide.
He has enough range that I can't backdash out stuff. Okay. So now my opponent has moved into basically defense outright. Either that means that they have realized that's the only thing needed to beat me, which I don't think is true, or my offense has gotten a little bit better, which means that they now have to care. Therefore, I should now start thinking about whether or not I benefit from doing things like just dash up throw, or even walk up throw, depending. I'm fine with this because I specialize in this sort of thing, making the opponent feel as if their best option is to just keep blocking. From there, then I get to start to think about other things that I can do. And in Seth's case specifically, he does have some unblockables that you can set up as long as your opponent is willing to give you enough time to get into a particular specific position for it. I'm definitely not learning Seth unblockables today, but I can see some things shift. So it looks like we are back to... Oh, they're messing around because they have probably seen me as the main person they're fighting and therefore could build up some other stuff. So, Merkava is usually the style of character that I consider to be my nightmare. Dealing with all this, not my thing. But I do have an idea of how to fight this type of character. It usually involves a lot of standing heavy, because they're used to having exactly the right amount of range between you and them. And if you can make them wrong, even just a little bit, it usually helps. At the end of there, for a moment, I just contemplated what button to hit because I didn't want to hit the standing heavy. I knew that I was not in a spacing where I really wanted to hit that button at that moment. But I couldn't decide what else to hit. But there we go. You are seeing a little of it now. The opponent is used to the idea that if they are at X range, they're at advantage, the opponent doesn't want to move. Certainly don't want to be hitting unsafe heavy buttons. But I can do it. Nothing specifically prevents it. Therefore, I must learn to measure all of the ranges at which they are actually advantaged and the ranges where they're not, to know which button to hit. So again, whether or not that button is specifically a good idea to hit as a general thing, I don't know because I've only faced one opponent willing to play the character, and they might not be all that great yet. But I know that my instinct tells me there's a specific space at which Merkava does not need to approach, and as a result, most players will not assume that they should be approaching. They should wait for you to make some sort of mistake and mess up something. Now our Wallstein player has switched to Chaos, which is probably useful, but I have a little more experience against the character. A little bit. It's not necessarily going to help if they've got good Chaos combo stuff. So my best bet is to think about the way they played before and see what I can get out of that. This opponent was very interested in getting a specific type of jump-in done. If I take that into account, I should be watching for anti-airs more so than anything else, I think. And otherwise defending my space. If we assume that their perspective on how to play this is about the same, then me putting these out is easy. And I'm going to fall in the same way if I try to jump in on them. They're going to go up into an instant attack in the air, and even without Wallstein's range, they're still effective and able to win out. But Seth has some weird options about that too. It's just hard to remember to use it. Seth has fastball. And while I can't think of a necessarily strong way to deal with this that I can confirm, that I can learn to do within the pressure of a match, I'm definitely willing to try doing it because it's better than what I was doing before. Because now I can change my opponent's expectation of where I am enough to maybe get something out of it. And look, they're already starting to retreat again. That's probably a good sign, as I said. All I need to do really is make my opponent think about a different place I might be, and then they're more likely to let me get in this place. And you'll notice, look, they've already started to do an attack that would only make any sense if they expect me to be there. So, good. The ability to at least make them hesitate with this approaching is going to be key to my style, given that, as I said, I don't usually stop going in. There we go. That doesn't actually combo at max range. Notable. So, where do we go from there? We know that we can make them hesitate about how to keep me out, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get in all that well either. That's trickier methods of getting in are at least a little telegraphed. And he can only do his vanish like that from the ground. But we can at least start to see some of the flow that is required. I'm sure I'll just wake up with standing light, that's fine. In fact, I'll do this too. I don't have anything else to do with me there. But wait, look what we've got now. An opponent who is trying to get away from me with the life lead. Unfortunately, I can't keep it, but we did get them to that point, which is important. Oh well. But that was more so because I flinched, and I get a whole other round on top of that. Generally, if you feel you can understand what your opponent is doing and why, there's a good chance that they believe that you understand what you're doing, or that you're just easy to beat by defending. But there are advantages to that. If your opponent thinks you are easy to beat by just defending, then work on your offense. So now Carmine instead. Okay, no problem. Good stage. So before we had the problem of not knowing where Carmine was going to be or what we could do against him. And we definitely don't have enough meter, plus we just got Warple broken, so we don't know where to go. But what advantage does this character grant them according to what they've known about us in battle so far? Probably nothing. He's not actually all that good a character to be gaining advantage on you with. Because he has to spend a lot more time avoiding than Chaos or Waltz. However, he does have better punishes than them. So, if I wanted to win, the obvious change would be to shift that aspect of play. To try to do things more safely. And track him better mobility-wise.
A new sacrifice.
So let's consider what options Seth has against an opponent that he can't clip in and outrange that way. You can't really do the same thing as you were going to do with Merkaba because Carmine doesn't have to care. But Carmine does have to care at least a little bit about Seth's hop. Well, let's not call it hop kick. This. and a property space dash heavy.
次はない屈辱をするそこだ
But all that is just assumptions I've made within the last 40 seconds. Turns out to me not to be so bad, I guess. And that was supposed to be dash heavy, I just failed it somehow. Oh right, because I'm holding down forward, so I can't do it that way.
セカンドクローズディバイド
Not all of this is about holding your own space, but sometimes it's also about understanding the space your opponent wants or needs to hold. For example, my opponent is now waiting for me to approach, which is obviously the correct option. But now that they are getting to that point, and I don't have to worry about being instantly rushed down by Carmine, probably, I can use some of my other tools again. We're gonna hope for that. But we are currently in that rush down state and cornered, so don't expect too much.
大幕のセグメント
Ooh, missed it again. That was misjudging, as in I wanted to go for it, but realized too late, no, I'm probably too close. He can just hit a button and get me out of this without me getting anything off him. And he seems to be too good at the chase down to make that a good idea either. I have a command grab, but I don't remember how to do this command grab on him. I think it was like quarter circle, half circle, back, forward, and whatever. So with a head full of ideas, we'll be coming to the end of this relatively shorter stream. With probably one final match. Now let's see what they think about this, because I quote-unquote know this matchup, or rather it's the only one I've actually practiced at all. It is similar to the Carmine matchup, except that you get less space to do a particular thing. And have to basically mix up between doing that and actually doing the forward attack. Basically, it comes down to where the phone-on player thinks you're going to be when you do this. Ooh, invalid combo. So somewhere in there I could have done something. That looks like it was all legit. Oh, no, there's one. Roundabouts, huh? Alright. So, I'm not actually used to... I'm used to CPU Phonon and Amara's Phonon. One of them is less defensive in terms of being willing to try to put themselves in spaces to get advantageous attacks rather than winning off punishes, i.e. the CPU. And the other is far more aware, I guess, of what will eventually happen if their main way of playing is to run away. Namely that I can probably dodge my way out and win by timeout, because in that case, I'd actually be trying to play so that they could learn something. At this point, since this player is rotating through things, I'm not too specifically aiming to make them able to do that. But I can demonstrate that it's not that hard to move through Phonon's attacks with Seth. If you're used to dealing with zoners, which I relatively am. She's troublesome, but she's not like nightmarish. The problem is, of course, that at this point I don't have the skill or the damage to not lose the life lead. But I'm not really worried about this at the moment. Roundabout, got out. Because I don't find myself fearing this opponent, I more so find myself watching to see how I can get through them, rather than worrying about anything they're able to do. In other words, I'm not convinced that they actually know how to beat me on this character. I'm convinced that they know how to punish. And okay, so that's it. But I don't mind losing matches because my opponent's punishes are good and my offense is bad, because that is very, very inspiring in the sense of, okay, I just need better offense really. So, tomorrow we'll be having our Dragon Ball Fighters lobby, Kame House, beginner lobby as always. We're moving a little past beginner by now, but not too much. And on Friday we'll be having the actual disc guidance for our Dragon Ball Fighters bot. It will be shorter and much less explanation of why it works, how you should understand it, more so how you should use it, and how to input certain parts of it. I have learned nothing about this character from fighting them in the training. In fact, this is the perfect way to end the stream, hopefully, by demonstrating the difference between the two things. Assuming that they have any ability at all with this, because he's not really a character who can deal with Seth in that way, so I'm not sure. I have a fairly clear idea of this player's style at this point, which makes it a little easier to do certain things. As I noted, if I get punished, my health falls, so no problem. Miss target and therefore punished. That sort of thing comes from being so sure of your opponent's style of flow that you can just do that. I should have just gone for thrall makeup. In fact, I thought about going for thrall makeup and it made me wonder, am I really going to get away with that? That seems a little too easy. But I would have... And now that I have done that, it's probably a bad idea because now they'll just pressure me more on makeup. But whatever. But from my perspective, I have won out here because my opponent has won all the matches. In fact, that I believe was a perfect. But I now have a ton of information. I probably will not face this opponent again. They seem like the type who will manage to rank up and leave me far behind. But I thank them for their help with the stream. I will call it a night there. This has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good night, everyone.